Good morning, Goa. Welcome to the Good Morning Goa show with me, your host Shoaib. Today in the studio, I have with me Sandip Bhandare, the president of the Goa Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we would speak. Welcome, first of all, sir, to you on the Good Morning Goa show. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
Today we will be discussing on GST, a much talked about taxation regime which the state and the country would be implementing from tomorrow. So first thing first is GST is pitched as the next revolutionary financial change in the country, economic change. How do you and the industry sees that?
Yes, in principle, I agree fully because there are a lot of taxes as of now. We have state taxes, we have some VAT, we have a sales tax which has been levied, we have entertainment tax which is levied, we have an entry tax. So these are the all taxes at the state level. At the central level, we have excise duty, we have service tax. Now, this is a tax which is going to be, I would say, a mother of all those taxes, combining everything in its system, and therefore there will be only one tax across the nation. So not only for the Indians who know now that the rates would be fixed throughout India and there will be only one tax, but even for foreigners who are doing business in India, it would become much easier because they know that they have to only understand one law rather than going to each of the state.
So by and large, whether be it our local population or the investors from other countries, the simplification of law would make business
simplification,
and
transparency of the law, because only one law is there, it will become very transparent, and it will also equalize all the states in a sense that no state can now lower its taxes unduly to create an advantage for itself at the cost of the other states. So this is something which is therefore equalizes all the states in the eyes of the law.
So any goods or products or commodities that have been exempted from the GST?
Yes, the exemption is primarily coming in terms of essential goods, like basically the main agricultural produce, etc. That is something which has always been exempted even across the previous regimes, and that continues to be exempt. Essential services which are again provided by the government is something which is continuing to exempt. And another area which is there is in terms of your real estate completed real estate projects. That means if the project has been completed, because it suffers from stamp duty. Now this is the exemption which is going to be there throughout, and life essential things which would be there. For example, a government provides a passport to its citizens, that will be exempted. Services by the employees to the employer, that is the salary payment. Now this will not suffer the GST. So these are the kind of four broader level of the exemptions which will be prevailing.
And it does, and if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, also petroleum products and
yes,
the other
there are two types of products. As far as the petroleum products are concerned, they are broadly there in the definition of the goods, but government as of now does not want to disturb the status quo. So the old kind of a taxation would be still prevailing as far as the petroleum products are concerned. And the second product which has been completely kept out of even the definition of the goods is the alcohol for human consumption. Now this is something which will continue to remain under the VAT laws which were existing. So to that extent, this alcohol for human consumption, if someone is only selling alcohol for human consumption, now that will be still governed by the old VAT law which will remain there.
So in that terms, probably Goa will have a benefit, or will it be a?
Yes, in fact, not only Goa, lot of states had argued, since the GST is a new law, there was an apprehension sometimes remains whether your revenue would suffer specifically for a state. Alcohol contributes again a major amount of a revenue, and second again contributing factor is the petroleum products. So to that extent, states have guarded themselves, saying that they do not want alcohol to be included, and though the petroleum products are included, they want the old system to continue. Eventually, of course, one is to see when one goes down the line as to what would happen to these two types of products.
But what we are seeing is right now there are a lot of social media messages circulating around talking about various different taxation comparisons between service tax and plus the VAT and everything, and then the GST. In comparison to all these taxes accumulated, people are thinking that GST is going to make life more difficult in terms, it will become more expensive. How far is this going to be really true?
See, one is that typically we tend to compare the rate which has been charged to the consumers at the end point as a basis for seeing whether one which is larger and which is this way. So if you look only at that kind of a comparison, the GST would be higher than the amount of the taxes. But you have to remember two things. There were multiple taxes earlier. For example, for a same transaction could attract service tax, the same transaction could attract VAT. So you have to add this kind of two taxes and then see what is the comparison. But more important than this is the kind of the credit which is allowed for set off against the taxes paid by you in the earlier transactions. Take for example that if you are manufacturing a car, you had a steel which you had produced and therefore you paid excise duty on such steel. When you actually sold a car, you used to charge say VAT or sales tax. So the excise duty which you had paid, you could not set it off. So therefore, as you move along the product line chain, right from its raw material to this thing, there were a lot of taxes where cross utilization of the credit was not allowed. Once this is allowed, then the product prices itself would come down. And even with the so-called higher level of the GST, the final price to the customer should be lower. Because it's not only the final taxes, but it's all the taxes which have gone into production of those goods or services that is important. However, services as such, where there will be little bit of a difference because services presently were taxed with only one tax, that is 15% of the tax. Now here the taxes could be little bit higher because there were no multiple taxes on the services. But goods, there were multiple level of a taxes and therefore the prices should, in my opinion, come down eventually.
So you're saying that till now we didn't have this cross
utilization of the credit of what taxes you have paid earlier.
So that would help in rather in a big way to those major products that consumer products.
Yes. Practically every product along the line there were central taxes which consisted of an excise duty and other taxes or service tax and state taxes like VAT or a sales tax. Now one was not allowed to be set off against the other and therefore you had that cascading effect. That means you are not only taxing the goods, you are also taxing the tax which has been levied by one authority and that is taken as a base. Now that would disappear and therefore you are supposed to be getting the finished goods at a lower price because your raw material prices would have gone down, intermediate products would have gone down. Now those effects once you take into consideration, the final prices should come down and even with this higher rate of the GST at the end portion, the total incidence on the consumer should be lower. Now this is something which is the basic principle of the GST. But it would take some time because right now the goods on which taxes have been paid under the old regime are in stock. And therefore as you eventually move down and you start this chain and the completely new products come into existence, these things would be more evident.
So FMCG products would by and large become more cheaper as far as consumers are concerned.
Yes.
And how much time do you think? I mean, normally we cannot speculate a time frame, but then
I would suggest a time frame of around 2 to 3 months by the time the complete new raw materials are procured by the industry and as you go down this thing. So within around 2 or 3 months is I think the time by which there will be an appropriate stock taken by each of the companies. Okay, they may start earlier also, but I think 3 months would be an outer period to see the movement in the prices.
So while we're talking about how much it's going to have an effect and everything, one very big question is about the preparedness to change. Get into GST and the whole change that is going to take place. How prepared is the Goan industry?
See, I would put it across. This preparation now is to be from 2 or 3 sides. One, of course, is the central government, which has been having laid down the basic IT infrastructure, because this IT infrastructure is going to be the backbone. There's hardly going to be anything manual. So that is the key. And to that extent, great efforts have been put up by the central government and also some things by the state government in terms of establishing the IT infrastructure. So this is the one thing which is there. Second, from the industry side is first in acceptance, yes, GST is going to come, because till that time we had something like, whether it will be coming, whether it will be deferred, and therefore the decisions were getting postponed. So familiarization, one is the inevitability of the GST and therefore, mentally getting prepared, and then putting their systems in order. Here, I think, some sort of a preparation is still required from the industry, partly because new rates, new notifications are getting continuously getting out into the public domain, and therefore, you take some time to absorb. Even for professionals, it takes some time to absorb, and then for the industry also, it will take time to absorb and putting their systems in order. Many of them have started. The bigger industries specifically have started their exercises because they go on that ERP systems, and where changes are required to be made months in advance. So they have set up, but this is something like this. Only when you start actually, then you will be able to make the required final level of the changes, even for IT infrastructure.
So with regard to our Goan industries, how skeptic have been our business houses with regard to GST's implementation? Because now earlier it was about the date, whether it's going to be implemented or not. Now we know that 1st July is the date,
yes,
and from tomorrow onwards GST is going to be implemented. So
see, I would divide the preparedness into 3 or 4 issues. First is whether you have really migrated to a GST regime, which many of the dealers have done.
okay.
2, are you sure what are the rates for the products which you are selling? So this is the second level of this thing. And do you have the appropriate codes for those products? These are of course technical things. Similarly, from whom are you purchasing? Are they registered for these things and their preparedness? Now these are the 2 things. New format of the invoice which consists of the details. Now these things can be very well prepared and to an extent which is ready. What are the issues which are going to come up, is some of the things is that how do you compile and file all these extensive data in the month after month, because there are 3 returns. Government of course has been saying that it is the same return which is divided into 3 parts, whereby you say sales at one point of the time, the purchases on one time, and the final taxation payment. But nevertheless, these 3 returns, how are you prepared? Towards that, government has already given you certain leeway, saying that first 2 months we will give you a flexibility by way of a delayed filing. Now this is where the actual preparedness of yours would be tested. But as far as the preparedness in terms of rates are concerned, I think there is a fair level of knowledge. But things would change. And this is where I think certain handholding would be required both from the central government and state government, saying that this is a completely, as they say, game changer kind of a new taxation system, and therefore I should allow certain flexibility to the dealers. There is an understanding with the government also.
So by and large, we see in India and specifically in our country, in our state also, we have a lot of graduates who ultimately after passing out, even BCom or even for that matter postgraduates, who have not been able to get into the industry because the consuming capacity of the employment capacity of the industry was not as much as the pass out were. Will this in a way help more employment, where we would have so many entries to be made, so more industries would require more hands?
Yes, because it would now not become possible for an entrepreneur fully to look at your internal things for a smaller this, where there will be a lot of compliances which are required. So there is a tremendous scope for this kind of a people. I was told by EDC chairman Siddharth Kunkolekar that even from the point of view EDC, he wants to have this kind of under the maybe CMRY or something, sanction loans faster for computers and other things for the graduates, and therefore from there they can set up their own and maybe provide in some cases even a space to them somewhere where they can come plug and then start filing returns. So there is a potential for the Goan graduates to be employed now, either as part of the industry or as independent consultants who could do these returns. There's a huge scope, because these returns and all will be something which many chartered accountants per se may not be handling, and therefore there is a scope here.
And I think the government also has come forward with in the initial phase helping out the industry in with trained people to file these returns.
Yes, government has done two things actually. Is that there is a proposal that each of the ward of the commercial taxes department would have a help desk there. They would have the scanner and photocopier things there. So they will help them in filing the returns. The central excise department, stroke service department also is taking some sort of steps that way. Central government has got a kind of a war room. They have said they opened for dealing with those issues. So everyone is pitching its efforts in this process.
Okay. Coming back to the taxation and the people, Goa is a tourism state, and we are by and large a consumer state. So for a state like Goa, how big a change is this going to be? Whether our revenues are going to grow as predicted by the Chief Minister, or is it going to go less?
See, I would look tourism again from two point of view, from the point of the hotel industry and those tourists, and from the government. Government definitely would be a beneficiary because certain service taxes were so far not being collected. Of course, there were luxury taxes and all, but that will have to be also there. But eventually, I think the share of the government would definitely rise because now the service tax portion, which will be now part of GST, would be accruing to the state. So that is one thing which is there. From the point of view of the tourism, I was told by some of the 5-star hotels that the rate is at 28%. Because their contention was like this: as far as the charter tourists are concerned, they are not looking at the rates across India, they are looking rates across the nations. And therefore, if the nations find or globals find that the rate, the last rate which the consumer sees on that end of it is higher, then they may be affected. But to that extent, some proactiveness have been already shown by the government. The 5-star hotels with a 5,000 rupees tariff rate which was there, which were attracted this 28%, now that 5,000 has been increased to 7,500.
Okay.
And again, I think as we go along, as more kind of inputs are being received by the government would show flexibility. Already we are seeing a lot of flexibility being shown by the government in a number of areas.
And I also would want to ask you, the exemptions provided to those whose turnover is 20 lakhs, how is it going to help the smaller entrepreneurs?
See, smaller entrepreneurs lack from infrastructure, maybe accountants, maybe computers, maybe IT infrastructure. So the government has actually provided them an exemption up to 20 lakhs. It's definitely going to be help. But at the same time, wherever you are purchasing those goods or services from these people, then you have to pay what is known as a reverse service tax. That means the registered GST players who are going to purchase these services or goods from non-registered are actually where you have to pay their taxes, and of course you can claim a credit wherever it is due. Again, to relax that, government has come out with some notification saying that up to 5,000 rupees if you are buying for a day from this kind of thing, small things, you may go in the market, buy stationery, etc. So that is something which is going to be exempted. But I think this is an area where government needs to look further so that this small industry does not come into a problem at a later date.
So will the this reverse charge factor which you're talking about affect rather the smaller entrepreneurs, because then the bigger enterprises, bigger business houses may eventually not involve in business with this smaller entrepreneurs?
Yes, to an extent you are right, because we have also been getting certain feedback from the smaller industries saying that wherever they have gone to a bigger enterprises and they have said that you should be registered for the GST, otherwise we have got other people, your competitors who are already registered, and we might avail the services from them. This is not the intention of the government. The government nowhere intends that, because our economy is also largely dependent upon the smaller players, and it also provides a livelihood and employment for them. But sometimes what is happening, because of the kind of a reverse charge, fear of reverse charge mechanism, that bigger players are saying we will not do this. But I suppose as we go down the line, government would definitely look, and it should look into these areas so that there should not be any problem to the smaller traders and service providers.
Also at the same time, when talking about smaller traders, in Goa specifically, in the aftermath of what happened, the mining shutdown, and a lot of people have begun their own businesses, set up small businesses, and probably their turnovers may be beyond 20 lakhs. How much of an effect is they're going to have?
See, most of those hotels would come under the provision of the service. Now, if there is a specific, they can go for exemptions to a great extent, because up to 75, from 20 to 75 lakhs is what is known as a compounding kind of a composition which has been fixed up.
Okay.
And most of these hotels sell to the end customers.
Yes.
So therefore, there should be no problem because of any reverse tax in such cases. So government has been that way very flexible. 75 lakhs is, I suppose, a very reasonable limit. You pay, of course, you are not able to get a credit of whatever you have done. You pay a certain level of a composition tax, 3% or something like this. So they have fixed up various slabs, So once you pay that, then, you should be out of the, hold those formalities, basically compliance regime. So they are protected in a sense.
And two things that I would want to ask you specifically is one about the cellular industry. Cell phones are going to be, the tax on cell phones is going to be like almost 3 times than current, if I'm not wrong. It's being, GST would be at 18%. And earlier, I suppose the whole taxes would come to around 6 or 8%, something like that. So is using cell phones going to be more expensive in the near future then?
See, again, one, of course, the rates are not something which are sacrosanct to that extent. We have seen across the lines, rates are getting shuffled wherever representations have gone to the government and where it is felt. At the same time, also, as I said, you have to look at the back end to see what kind of rates were earlier prevailing, the overall effect and the savings which is there. But when you are mixing and matching, these kind of things are bound to happen. I have not really gone into the cellular industry as such as to compare. But I think some kind of things feeling is also there that cellular now, when you are looking, there could be a basic cell phone which provides you, and today you are looking at smartphones also which are high level goods, and there is a government realization that 50,000, 1 lakh rupees cell phone should definitely cost you more, and government also gets revenue. That realization is also there.
Probably. But how about the banking sector? Because people are getting messages that henceforth your service charge will not be 12%, but it will be 15%. And these messages are coming from the banks themselves to the consumers. So
yes, so service sector, as I said, was all across enjoying 15%. Now some of them have come in 12%, some of them have come in 18%. So to an extent, the service sectors would become costlier. But at the same time, if you are doing business, then you are able to get an appropriate credit of this whatever is charged. So it is the final end customers where the effect is going to come up. And for the banks also, if there was any input credit which they were not getting earlier, now they will be able to get. So there will be some relief, but service sector there would be a certain percentage of rise because they were paying only one kind of a taxes.
So by and large, if you're talking about Goa, if I ask you what do you see GST is, Goa's future when it comes to GST? How profitable or good is it going to be for Goa?
For the state of Goa, government, if you are looking at it, one, it is supposed to be getting higher revenue. Partly because the certain revenue which was still now not accruing to it would be coming up. GST is also supposed to be plugging the loopholes. And therefore, if you are totally not at all showing the goods, services, etc., now that is supposed to be caught into the net, and therefore again there will be a rise in the revenue. The government also has said that it will compensate for any loss of a revenue. For the customers, again, to an extent, service might become a little bit costlier, but eventually as we move down the line, how everything is getting affected, because there are also certain goods which are consumed in the process of service. So the effect of that will be clear only 2 to 3 months. But the question is, in principle, GST is really very good, and therefore some sort of a here or there adjustments across goods and services may be there, but still we have to feel in the long term the effect of the GST would be a rise in the GDP. That would benefit each and everyone.
But then inflation has always been a major question when it comes to taxes, implementation of taxes. Are we looking at an inflation in the near immediate futures as an effect of implementation of GST, at least for temporary basis?
No, I would feel that for the next 2 to 3 months, prices will not neither change upwards nor downwards, except for services which might be little bit upwards. Okay. But eventually, as you go down, people understand in what advantages it is resulting. There should be a reduction in the prices, overall prices to the consumers, and I don't think at least there would be any inflation. Inflation, at least I am not at all looking at it.
Okay, so that is a good news for the consumers and people by and large, that the implementation of GST will not lead to price rise or inflation of products. At least the FMCG products, which by and large today are being purchased online, purchased across on the market, are not going to going to become cheaper. On that note, sir, I thank you so very much on behalf of HCN News and Entertainment Channel for joining us this morning and very candidly responding to all those ambiguous questions that we have had, probably even a lot of viewers had in their minds. Thanks once again on behalf of HCN.
Thank you very much and a good day.
Yeah, and as Sir said, we do not look forward for an inflation, at least in the immediate future, and that is a good news for all those consumers who have, for all the people rather across, who have been thinking that GST would lead to price rise and make life more expensive than currently. On that note, I thank you viewers for tuning into HCN News and Entertainment Channel. Until Monday, when I'm here once again with yet another guest, keep watching HCN.